it's great to be on this panel. Great to talk about something a little bit further upstream. I mean, we've seen some of these technologies like cold ironing, a lot of heavy industry, all requires vast amounts of renewable energy, and that's something which we think we can deliver. So if we can just go through to the next slide. There have been a lot of studies to look at the scale of the resource of tidal range energy. Now, I'll quickly add in a note that there are two different forms of tidal energy. There's tidal stream, which uses kinetic energy, so the velocity of the tidal currents drives turbines, which are typically mounted to the seabed or floating, or there's tidal range, which uses the difference in water levels to then drive turbines. They're different resources, they're applicable in different areas. What we're essentially focusing on is tidal range because we're in an area where the tidal range is very large and we've also got quite shallow seas, so building structures to hold the tide back is more cost effective than in other areas. So you can see the map on the left shows where tidal energy is concentrated across the globe. Various factors affect why you've got high tidal ranges in certain areas, but it is spread across different areas. But particularly the UK and Northern Europe, as you can see from the diagram on the right, has very high concentrations in specific areas. One of the locations which has been identified is Liverpool Bay. Also some locations around here on the east coast, as we've seen with the Humber, significant tidal ranges and opportunities to harness this very predictable and renewable power source. Now, in the past, there have been studies to look at what the UK resource is like, typically looking at barrages. If you extend the envelope to look at things like lagoons, which can be either coastal or offshore, the amount of power available is significantly higher. I mean, if you look in energy terms, a recent paper which was done by SP Neal, published last year, calculated quite conservatively the amount of energy available, 683 terawatt hours annually, which is over double what the current UK electricity requirement is. So if we could harness just 10% of that, there's an opportunity for 20% of our energy requirements from this very long-term, low-risk technology. So we can go to the next slide. So just to give you a little snapshot of the history, this is a relatively mature technology. We've had projects like Laurent and Sarmalo, which was commissioned in 1966, still operating today, over 50 years. They've just changed their control and instrumentation equipment, but the turbines are still the original turbines, still generating power like a lot of hydropower stations that can go on into the future, foreseeably over 120 years. So these are very long life cycle legacy projects. There's Annapolis in Canada, which was commissioned in 1980. That's a single 20 megawatt turbine. And also Siwoo in South Korea, which was commissioned in 2014. So these are real projects, you know, from 250 to 284 megawatts installed capacity. You can go there, you can walk around, you can look at them. And you've seen also at the same time, there have been significant studies which have been carried out in the UK. Lots of work in the 70s and 80s on the 7 projects. Those were then looked at again in 2010 with some more feasibility studies. But I must highlight that all of these projects and all of these previous studies right up until 2011 are based upon a technology which is now outdated. This is one of the most significant step changes which we've seen in tidal range, is new turbines which use variable frequency drives to regulate the speed of the machines as well as the guide vane angles and the blade angles. And what that means is you can now efficiently generate and pump in both directions. So you can maintain the same tidal levels which you would have had naturally within your basin. That not only gives you more energy, but it means that you can mitigate a lot of the negative environmental impacts which we've seen on other projects where they've done feasibility studies in the past. So a real technological step change which has changed the viability of this technology. So what's changed? So you can see obviously impacts of CO2 on climate change, driving policy. There's a much bigger focus on where we're going to get all this renewable energy from. Forecasts are showing that we're going to need twice as much electricity to 2050. We need to get that from a diverse supply. The scale of the resource is much bigger. There's been work to drive down costs, improve efficiencies of the technology, and as I've said, the way the technology works can also help to mitigate or minimize some of the environmental impacts. Significant opportunities just in the Liverpool Bay area where we're looking, projects which range from 2 to 4 gigawatts of installed capacity, and those could be delivered potentially as early as 2030, depending on how they're taken forward and which projects we choose to take ahead. The UK is currently a world leader in tidal research. If you look at the academic community, it's unrivaled in the UK. There's a real opportunity for this technology to be developed here in the UK. If you look at most of the tidal developers in the UK, they are UK-based tidal developers. So that there is an opportunity here for a new industry, which could be very significant. Export potential, as we've seen from the map, and also the fact that this is clean and predictable. It can contribute to a lot of our targets, which we see in the future. Now, I'm probably running over time a little bit, but I'll just end with a quick animation. Apologies, this is very conceptual, but it just shows you how these new turbines can potentially operate in order to mitigate some of the impacts and also maintain the natural tidal level. So on the right-hand side, you can see where the sea is. This is a cross-section through your structure with a turbine in the middle. You also have sluice gates running along it, and then this is your enclosed basin on the left. So if we can just click the mouse, it should hopefully, so you can see the tide, oh, no. Okay, so you can see the tide floods in, builds up a head difference. You then generate through your turbines in one direction. You then open your sluice gates to help to equalize the levels, and then you can pump in the opposite direction to maintain the natural tidal level. And then as the tide retreats, you hold the period until you generate a head difference, then you generate, and then you sluice in the opposite direction. And finally, you can then pump the remaining water out of your basin. You can even pump below the natural levels or above the natural levels to get more energy or create more intertidal habitat. So the flexibility of these machines now is completely unparalleled to what we've seen in the past. Thank you.